We're going to go over common factoring today. What we're going to do is we're going to be essentially moving from two different forms of quadratic equations. Okay? So when we change something by factoring it, in this case we're doing common factoring, all we're doing is moving from standard form, which is what we have above, to factored form. Okay? And before we did that, the previous lesson 2.1 is we moved from factored form to standard form by expanding. So these are the opposites of each other. Okay? Once we factor this, I'll show you what factored form essentially looks like. We're going to go through the very first question, which is 2x squared minus 6x. What we're looking for are common terms. So the first thing we're going to look at are the coefficients, which are the numbers in front of the variables. I need to find a common factor for those terms. Okay? One way you can do that is on the side, write the factors of each number and take the greatest common factor. So what are the factors of 2? 1 and 2. Very simple. Factors of 6? 1, 2, 3, and 6. Okay? So there are more than one common factor, but we always want to take the greatest one. 1 is a factor of all terms, no matter what you do. Okay? So we usually don't take 1 out of anything. The greatest common factor, or the GCF, is the value of 2 in this. So in other words, what I want to be doing is I need to be dividing each of these terms by at least 2. Okay? So what we'll do is we'll break this up into 2 separate steps. Eventually you'll be able to do this in 1. So the very first thing we're going to do is divide each of these terms by 2. But what that means is, that 2 doesn't disappear. Think of it as if we're taking the value of 2 out of both of these terms. Oh, I forgot it does that. Okay? So in other words, that 2 now starts our equation and we have brackets. Inside the brackets are exactly what we've equated. So 2x squared divided by 2, what would that equal? X squared. So that's the first term in the bracket. Same idea. Negative 6x divided by 2 would give us what? Negative 3x. Okay? So those are the 2 terms inside of each bracket. Okay? We took 2 out from both of them. Okay? Which is the reverse of distributive property, if you guys remember. Remember when we did distributive property, we brought 2 in, which is essentially going from factored form to standard form, what we call expanding. Okay? So I've done that with the coefficient, but I can actually also do that with the variable. Now I want you guys to think of this a little differently with variables. We have x squared and x. Okay? Essentially what we're going to do is we're going to take the variable out with the lowest power. Or in other words, we're just going to try to match up as many x's as possible. What are factors of x squared? X. It's the only one. How many times do I multiply x by itself? Twice. So think of it like we have 2 x's to work with. And this one, well, we only have x to the technically power of 1, so I only have 1 x to work with. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to match pairs up and pull a pair out at a time. So I have 1 pair of x's. In other words, I have x to the power of 1. So again, it's the same type of idea. We divide x to the power of 1 for both of these. That x to the power of 1 doesn't disappear. It now comes to the outside of the brackets. X squared divided by x to the power of 1. Anyone know? X. Just x. And negative 3x divided by x to the power of 1? Negative 3. Now, obviously, we don't need that power. So essentially, common factoring of this will give us 2x and then x minus 3. Okay? We'll jump quickly to question 2. 15x squared plus 3. Okay? First thing I'm going to do is find the greatest common factor of our coefficients. Quickly, what would the greatest common factor of 15 and 3 be? 3. Good. So we're going to divide both terms by 3. That 3 then comes to the outside of the brackets. And instead of doing this in 2 separate steps, let's also take out the factor of the variable. Is there a factor for this variable here? No, because there's no variable here, so I can't actually factor the variable. The variable is going to have to stay. So what would 15x squared divided by 3 be? 5x squared. 3 divided by 3? That's it. That's our answer to the first question. This is our answer to the second one. That's essentially common factoring.